Guys, you're not going to believe what Danielle Smith just pulled off in Alberta. Canada's most controversial premier just launched a strategy that's putting Ottawa on high alert and could completely change the future of the country. And look, it's not what you're thinking. She didn't declare independence, but what she did is actually smarter and more revolutionary. Get ready, because this story will show you how a political leader can use democracy brilliantly to give voice to the people while maintaining the country's stability. But before we continue, if you want to stay up to date with the most impactful political news in the world, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and leave your like, because today's content is going to be epic. And in the comments, let me know. Do you think Alberta has reasons to seek more autonomy? I want to hear your opinions. So folks, let's understand what's really happening, because the media is covering this completely wrong. Danielle Smith isn't promoting separatism irresponsibly like some outlets are trying to paint it. Actually, she's doing something absolutely genius that shows real political maturity and democratic leadership. Instead of making unilateral declarations or creating unnecessary chaos, Smith is putting the power directly in the hands of Albertans through a completely legal and democratic process. Here's what actually happened that has everyone talking. Smith announced that her government will facilitate a process where Alberta citizens can petition for a referendum on provincial sovereignty if they gather enough signatures. But here's the brilliant part. She's not pushing for this herself. She's simply creating the democratic framework for citizens to have their voices heard if they want to. It's like she's saying, look, if this is what Albertans really want, then let's do it the right way, through proper democratic channels. And this is where it gets really interesting, because Smith has been very clear about her actual position. She wants what she calls a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. This isn't about breaking up the country, it's about Alberta having more control over its own resources, economy, and decision-making while remaining part of Canada. Think of it like a teenager who wants more independence but still wants to be part of the family. Now, why is this making waves in Ottawa? Because Alberta is not just any province. We're talking about Canada's economic powerhouse. Alberta contributes massive amounts to the federal treasury through oil revenues, and the province has legitimate grievances about how those resources are managed and how federal policies affect their economy. When Alberta talks about more autonomy, Ottawa listens because the economic implications are enormous. But here's what's really smart about Smith's approach. Instead of creating a constitutional crisis or making inflammatory statements, she's using the existing democratic system to address legitimate concerns. She's essentially telling the federal government, look, if you don't start taking Alberta's concerns seriously, Albertans might decide they want to take a different path, but we're going to let them decide democratically. This puts Prime Minister Trudeau in a really interesting position. He can't dismiss this as just political grandstanding, because Smith is following proper democratic procedures. At the same time, he has to take Alberta's concerns seriously, because the possibility of a referendum, even if it's citizen-initiated, creates real pressure for federal-provincial dialogue. What's fascinating is how this reflects broader tensions. In Canadian federalism, Alberta has long felt that federal policies, particularly around energy and environmental regulations, disproportionately impact their economy while benefiting other provinces. The carbon tax, pipeline approvals, and various environmental regulations have created genuine frustration among many Albertans who feel their economic interests are being sacrificed for political gains elsewhere. Smith is tapping into these real grievances, but channeling them through democratic institutions rather than destructive rhetoric. It's actually a masterclass in political strategy, because she's giving voice to legitimate concerns while maintaining stability and constitutional order. Now, let's talk about what this means practically. If citizens do gather enough signatures for a referendum, it doesn't mean Alberta automatically separates. Referendums are consultative. They gauge public opinion but don't automatically trigger legal changes. What a referendum would do is create enormous political pressure for renewed federal-provincial negotiations on Alberta's role within Confederation. This is where Smith's strategy gets really clever. By facilitating this democratic process, she's creating leverage for negotiations with Ottawa without actually threatening the stability of the country. It's like she's saying, we prefer to work things out within Canada, but Albertans need to know their concerns are being heard and addressed. The economic implications are staggering to consider. Alberta produces about 80% of Canada's oil and gas, contributes billions in federal taxes, and has been a net contributor to federal programs that benefit other provinces. If Alberta were to gain more autonomy over its resources, it could fundamentally reshape Canada's economic landscape. But here's what's most impressive about Smith's approach. She's not fear-mongering or creating unnecessary division. She's acknowledging that some Albertans have genuine concerns about their place in Confederation, while providing a constructive democratic outlet for those concerns. This is political leadership at its finest. The federal response has been predictably cautious. Ottawa knows they can't ignore Alberta's concerns, but they also can't be seen as encouraging separatist sentiments. It's creating exactly the kind of productive tension that can lead to meaningful federal-provincial dialogue and potentially positive changes for all Canadians. What's really interesting is how this reflects global trends toward greater regional autonomy within federal systems. We're seeing similar movements in various countries where regions want more control over their economic and political destiny while remaining part of larger federal structures. Smith's strategy also demonstrates sophisticated understanding of Canadian constitutional law. She knows that unilateral separation would be extremely difficult legally, but she also knows that democratic pressure through referendums can create political momentum for constitutional negotiations and changes that benefit Alberta within the existing system. This whole situation shows how a skilled political leader can channel legitimate grievances into productive democratic action rather than destructive conflict. Smith is giving Albertans agency over their political future while maintaining respect for democratic institutions and constitutional order. The implications extend beyond Alberta, too. Other provinces are watching this carefully because many have their own concerns about federal-provincial relations. Smith's approach could inspire similar democratic movements elsewhere, potentially leading to a broader renewal of Canadian federalism that better balances federal authority with provincial autonomy. What makes this story so compelling is that it shows democracy working as it should. Instead of backroom deals or inflammatory rhetoric, we're seeing transparent, citizen-driven processes that give people real voice in their political future. Whether you agree with Alberta's concerns or not, you have to respect the democratic way Smith is approaching this challenge. So what happens next? That depends largely on whether Albertans decide to pursue the referendum option and how Ottawa responds to this democratic pressure. But one thing is clear, Danielle Smith has changed the conversation about federal-provincial relations in Canada, and she's done it through democratic leadership rather than divisive politics. This is exactly the kind of constructive political leadership we need more of. Leaders who listen to legitimate concerns, respect democratic processes, and work within existing institutions to address real problems. Whatever you think about Alberta's specific concerns, Smith's approach demonstrates how democracy can work to address even the most challenging political issues. And that's why this story matters beyond just Canadian politics. It shows how skilled leaders can channel regional frustrations into productive democratic action rather than destructive conflict. In a world where political tensions often lead to division and chaos, Smith's approach offers a model for how democratic institutions can address legitimate grievances while maintaining stability and unity. So there you have it, folks, the real story behind the headlines about Alberta and sovereignty. Not a reckless push for separation, but a sophisticated democratic strategy that gives citizens voice while maintaining respect for constitutional order. What do you think about Smith's approach? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth political analysis that goes beyond the headlines.